Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. What happens when a woman who has already survived heartbreak, betrayal and loss is handed the most devastating news of her life? This is Hope Logan's story and I promise you nothing could have prepared her for this. Hope Logan, one of the most emotionally resilient characters in The Bold and the Beautiful, was quietly trying to rebuild her life after a brutal breakup with Liam Spencer. She was focused on her work at Forrester Creations, being the best mother she could be, and slowly, carefully stitching herself back together. Then came the bombshell. She discovered she was pregnant, and just when it seemed like this surprise could be a beautiful new beginning, everything took a sharp and terrifying turn. Her pregnancy was flagged as high risk. Her baby's survival was uncertain, and the emotional weight of that reality nearly crushed her entirely. The people closest to her were pulled into the storm, old rivalries cracked, new alliances formed, and at the center of it all stood Lee Finnegan, the steady, brilliant physician who found herself far more emotionally involved than she ever expected to be. Let's talk about where Hope was emotionally before any of this happened because context matters so much here. These women had been through the absolute ringer, complicated love triangles that dragged on for years, marriages that crumbled, and betrayals from the very people who were supposed to have her back, and yet, despite all of that, she never fully gave up on herself. There is something almost painful about watching a person fight that hard to stay soft in a world that keeps punching them. So, when we find Hope in this delicate healing phase, cautiously reopening her heart, leaning into her role as a mother and professional, you want to believe the universe is finally going to give her a break. Then she finds out she's pregnant. I mean, just imagine how that moment felt. The absolute collision of emotions, fear hitting first, followed immediately by shock, bewilderment, and then this small, fragile flicker of happiness. Because for Hope, a new life growing inside her wasn't just a miracle reality. It felt symbolic, like maybe this was the clean slate she had been searching for, a second chance untouched by all the mess that came before. She held on to that feeling even as the more complicated question began to surface. Who was the father? And the moment that question entered the room, everything changed. The Forrester and Logan families began hearing whispers, and as anyone who watches this show, those whispers in those families have a way of ripping open every wound that was ever barely closed. Steffi Forrester's reaction is something I want to sit with for a second because it was far more layered than a simple rivalry response. Yes, the news rattled her. Of course it did. This directly connected to her past with both Hope and Liam. But what's interesting is that her reaction wasn't purely competitive. There was a genuine fear underneath it. A worry that this pregnancy would spiral into everyone's lives back into chaos. And honestly, you can't blame her for feeling that way. She had been there before. Liam, blessed his tortured soul, was a walking contradiction from that moment he found out. He was drawn back into Hope's orbit almost involuntarily, that gravitational pull he's never quite managed to escape, and the possibility that he might be the father that cracked open a whole vault of feelings he thought he had locked away for good. He was trying to maintain his commitment to Steffi while his protective instincts were screaming at him to run toward Hope. I can't imagine carrying that level of internal conflict every single day. Now let's talk about Lee Finnegan because she is quietly one of the most compelling figures in this entire storyline. She is a woman defined by precision, a physician who processes the world through logic and clinical accuracy. When Hope came to her seeking medical advice, Lee was professional, thorough, composed, but you could feel even in the stillness of that sterile office that something in the atmosphere was different. Hope noticed it too. She couldn't put her finger on it. But the tension was undeniable. And then Lee spoke. The words were measured, deliberate, and devastating. The pregnancy was real, but it was not progressing the way it should be. Early signs pointed to a high risk condition that could endanger not just the baby, but Hope herself. I can't believe how heavy that must have landed. Hope had worked in clinging to the idea of a fresh start, and in a matter of minutes, she was sitting there feeling the walls close in around her. Lee didn't sugarcoat it. She made clear that there were serious doubts about viability, that the pregnancy would require constant monitoring, possible bed rest, and brutally hard decisions down the road. And for a woman who had already experienced devastating loss, the possibility of losing another child was almost too much to carry. When Hope asked through her tears whether her baby was going to be okay, that single question hit like a freight train, and Lee hesitated. The strong, composed, always certain women hesitated. That pause said everything. The risks were substantial, she admitted, but it was too early to know for sure. That's not comfort, that's the kind of answer that sits in your chest and doesn't let you breathe. The family's response was immediate and emotionally raw. Brooke Logan rushed to her daughter's side, her heart breaking at the sight of Hope facing yet another possible tragedy, and it reignited something deep in Brooke, her own regrets, her own fears, the haunting question of whether their family's turbulent history had somehow led them here. Steffi, on the other hand, had to wrestle with feelings she wasn't expecting to feel. Despite everything between them, the idea of any mother potentially losing a child stripped away the rivalry she softened, and underneath that empathy, there was still the quiet, private fear about what this meant for her own family's stability. As the days passed, Hope's life became a relentless cycle of tests and waiting. Every appointment was an act of courage, every quiet moment at home was a battleground, and yet and this is what gets me. She never fully let go, even as the uncertainty wore on her physically and emotionally, even as memories of past losses came flooding back with cruel clarity. She held on. She had already fallen in love with this baby, regardless of what the future held. The moment of reckoning came during a follow up appointment that changed everything. Lee walked in with a serious demeanor that Hope recognized immediately as a warning. The latest results were in, and they confirmed her worst fears. The pregnancy was not progressing as it should be. The baby might not survive, and if hope continued, she herself might be in serious danger. Like a storm cloud, the words lingered in the atmosphere. Hope's world fell apart. Everything she had dared to hope for began to slip away. The choice in front of her was unbearable: carry on and risk everything, or consider ending the pregnancy to protect her own life. Brooke urged caution, driven purely by the desperate need to keep her daughter safe. Steffi echoed that, setting aside her complicated feelings, now stand on the side of Hope's survival. Even Liam, tangled up in his own guilt and fear, couldn't hide how terrified he was of losing her. But Hope wasn't ready to surrender. In a deeply emotional moment, she looked at Lee and said she wanted to fight, that as long as there was any chance at all, she was going to take it. Lee acknowledged the decision but made no promises. The road ahead would be brutally hard, and she wanted Hope to know that fully. The storyline does something quite remarkable within the soap opera format. It forces every character to confront something deeply personal under the pressure of someone else's crisis. Liam is forced to examine what his feelings for Hope really mean. Steffi is forced to reckon with the limits of her rivalry. Brooke is forced to face her helplessness as a parent, and Lee, perhaps most significantly, is forced to acknowledge that medicine doesn't always have answers, and that being human sometimes means hoping for things science cannot guarantee. Hope's pregnancy storyline isn't just a dramatic plot device, it's an emotional mirror held up to everyone around her. Hope Logan deserves so much better than what this universe keeps throwing at her. And yet, there is something undeniably powerful about watching her refuse to break. The decision To fight knowing the odds, knowing the cost, that's not naivety. That's real, bone deep courage. Lee Finnegan continues to be criminally underutilized as a character, and storylines like this are exactly why she deserves to be front and center. The emotional complexity here is exactly what makes this show worth watching. Hope Logan's journey is far from over, and if this storyline has shown us anything, it's that the most gripping drama doesn't come from shocking twist alone. It comes from watching people choose to keep fighting when every reason to stop is right in front of them. So tell me, do you think Hope's baby will survive? And do you believe Liam will finally make a definitive choice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I need to know where you stand. If this story moved you even a little, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a breakdown like this one.